Hi, and welcome to another episode of A Thought in Progress, subtitled I Have Something to Say. You'll notice a couple things here. I've got new glasses and there's no hat on my head. I kind of thought I'd sport my new haircut a little bit. I even shaved, so just some minor housekeeping things on my appearance. And I wanted to talk about a couple things without going overboard on the time. But I want to talk about because I've got a new writing project going on, um, which I am tentatively calling right now a Jesus story. And yes, it's about Jesus and kind of a different perspective. Um, yeah, I know everybody writes about Jesus at some point, and there's all kinds of fiction and nonfiction out there. But the fact is, Jesus is still interesting and he still sells. So I'm attempting to put that together. So be on the lookout for that. I've been writing some poetry, which I'll post on the Facebook page soon. Um, Basically, almost completely finished with the third installment of my the committed series, and tentatively calling this episode the third installment Panacea, which means cure all, or something that kind of is, yeah, we all know what cure all means. So I've got a lot going on, obviously. Um, so the Jesus story, I wanted to put that together, and I want to talk a little bit about one of Jesus' episodes in his life where he was feeding the multitude. And this has always intrigued me as one of the most important pieces of what Jesus tried to teach. When all those people follow him, I believe it was on the beaches of the Sea of Capernaum or something along those lines. Um, and 5,000 people are there, and it was probably more like 20,000 because back in the day you only counted, the head of the household as a person. So it was probably more like 20,000 people, men, women, and children. Um, and it was mealtime. It was mealtime there, and on that day, on that fateful day, and they were far from any town, and nobody had any money. One kid had like five a loaf of bread or two and some fish or something like that. And we all know the rest of the story. Jesus divides it and feeds everybody. Now, the important piece I want to highlight is that before Jesus feeds them, the disciples come to him and tell him to send everybody away. It's almost mealtime. Everybody's hungry. Send them away. Send away the crowd. So what does Jesus say? And this is key. Jesus says he turns to Peter, who had addressed him about it, and he says to him, "Feed them yourself." Now I want to let that sink in for a moment. Jesus does not initially go right into the miracle of feeding everybody. He tells Peter, "Feed them yourself," as if Peter could. And it's not a joke. It's not like this thing where he's passing along the responsibility or anything. He's very serious with Peter. Feed him yourself. So what does that mean for us Christians? And I count myself a Christian, even though it's not the only thing I believe in. And my beliefs are slightly different, but I do believe in the Christ of love. So let's leave it at that. Um, and the power of love and all that good stuff. And the fruits of the Spirit and all that. Okay, great. But what does this mean for us? What does this mean for us? It means we have a job to do. Later on, Jesus tells Peter, "Feed my sheep," right? After he resurrects, before he ascends, and so that's just a kind of you know, a recital of what he said earlier. You know, um, so what does this mean? It means we have a job to do. It means that before we turn to Jesus, we better have an idea how we're going to handle it, and then ask for His help with it. So it's a whole relationship thing, and I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll invite you to meditate on that as if it was a Buddhist koan, because I'm a Buddhist as well. Sometimes a Buddhist before a Christian, actually, to be honest with you. But again, I believe in the power of what Jesus was trying to teach, and I believe in his resurrection, and I believe he's my savior. All that said, Buddhism has a lot to offer, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Um, Now, shifting gears here, and maybe I probably should have made this into two videos, but let's call this part part B here, part two of the video. You can stop here and meditate on what I had said about the Jesus piece if you want. But I also and let's actually pause here for a moment because there's an important other piece that I haven't said yet, and I know I'm wrapping a lot into this episode because I haven't shot a video in a while for various reasons, internet complications as part of that. Um, my sister-in-law, who I just made manager of this channel, should be adding little things and bits and pieces to these videos. If not this one, then videos moving forward. So be on the lookout for little changes and her artistic amazing touches to this to her contributions to this channel. So that's something to be aware of. Now on to part two or part B or whatever you want to call it, part two of this video. I want to talk a little bit about trauma and some of the positive effects of what trauma can do. And I lift that up because, along with all the other projects that I'm doing, I will be part of a panel discussion on trauma-informed care in September. And you can find, um, I will post some information on that on my Facebook page eventually, between now and then. But it's going to be held at Einstein in an auditorium on the Einstein campus there on Old York Road, near Olney Transportation Center. And so be on the lookout for that. Um, but I think lots of times we get in this space where we want to minimize trauma and we want to wrap people in bubble wrap and never let them get hurt and never no trauma, no trauma. And then if they do go through trauma, let's babysit them a little bit. Man, wow. There is some positive effects of trauma, believe it or not. It creates resiliency. It creates various skills, and I know. Let's first look at some of the negative things that the the science of psychology, have kind of pointed out. Um, okay, so trauma really can create some maladaptive behavior patterns where, for this moment, this trauma is happening. I'm trying to survive it, so I might dissociate, or I might, several other different things. And maybe that's where mental health diagnoses come from. Then maybe that's where mental health conditions come from. Great, probably. But it's important to point out that there's no such thing as a life without trauma. We're all going to experience trauma, and we can't escape it. It's part of life. Even if it's only the trauma of birth and the rest of our lives are from there on out are beautiful, there's still trauma even in being born into this carnal reality. That being said, let's really, let's really own that for a moment. You know, Trauma is inevitable. Okay? That being said, are there some positive parts to that? And should we stop trying to wrap people in bubble wrap, if you know what I mean? Like I said, trauma builds resilience because you're only going to get a thicker skin and be able to deal with more stuff having experienced some hurt. Having been cut, the cut heals, you get a thicker skin. Okay? So, let's stop trying to wrap people in bubble wrap and spare people's feelings and all that. Okay? Yes, there's a time and place for that. But at the end of the day, if we baby people, during their time on this earth, they're never going to get stronger. You know, um, the caterpillar tries to break out of its cocoon. We help it out of its cocoon, not knowing that it needs to do that on its own so it can strengthen its wings and be able to fly. So we help the caterpillar break out of its cocoon. What does it do? It can't survive. It dies. All right. So there is such a thing as too much help and too much gentleness. Sometimes roughing each other up, you know, can be positive, can help you deal, can help you be stronger. You don't get stronger by being babied. Okay, so I think we're going to stop there. So we talked a little bit about Jesus feeding the multitude and taking some responsibility in our Christian life. We talked about um, the positive effects of trauma, how trauma can help us grow, learn, and develop stronger skills and thicker skins. And I mentioned some some events coming up, and I mentioned some writing that I'm doing. And thank you for tuning in, and I will hopefully see you next time. Thanks for watching.